Thanks.
All right, welcome to Hannity. All right, what we're going to cover this hour is so vitally important because you have just witnessed the single worst 24 hours in the history of your mainstream media. And according to the abusively biased press, well, the sky is literally falling. The world as you know it is now over, and the president that you, the American people, duly elected, is a traitor in the pocket of Vladimir Putin and Russia. Now, if all this hysteria seems patently absurd to you, well, that's because it is. Journalism, as I declared on this program, has been dead and buried since 2007 and 8. And in moments, we are going to show you what are the absolute worst examples you can't even begin to imagine. Plus, we'll point out the left's blatant double standard as we compare and contrast and show you how Obama's weak and feckless foreign policy seriously hurt this country's diplomatic efforts abroad. The president's cleaning up his mess. And we'll discuss how Robert Mueller's political witch hunt is playing a huge role in all of this. And later, we also have brand new developments surrounding the Trump-hating FBI lovebird, Strzok and Page. Now, tonight, despite massive amounts of predictable hysteria coming from those who want this president to fail, rest assured, let not your heart be troubled. America's policy is sound. Our republic is strong. The sun will continue to rise day after day on the greatest country God gave man. Sit tight, buckle up. We're back in New York for tonight's, well, really important breaking news opening monologue. All right, as we go through tonight's opening monologue, I want you to keep some very important questions in your mind. First, think about this. What is worse, a hostile regime that we know is hostile, run by a bad actor, trying to create chaos in our elections as it has many times in the past, or top officials in the Federal Bureau of Investigation rigging an investigation to advance their favored candidate that they should have indicted? Or what about the Democratic Party rigging their own party's primary to favor Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders? What's worse? Or is it worse that the Democratic Party bought and paid for Russian lies, of all things, to propagandize you, the American electorate, the American people, to lie outright to you, the American people, about an opposing candidate, rather than win on the important issues that will impact the lives of the American people? Or is it worse that the Democrats, the DNC, and Hillary Clinton, that they actually bought and paid for what turned out to be Russian lies presented as the bulk of information to secure a FISA warrant on an American citizen associated with an opposition party in a presidential election year so they could spy on that party, and a warrant based on Russian paid-for lies? Or is it worse the Democratic Party bought and paid for those Russian lies they were never verified and yet regurgitated by the self-righteous, sanctimonious, delusional media in this country that exalts itself as something they are not, as they claim to be unbiased and fair when they're nothing but the cheerleaders and crusaders for all things that only matter to the Democratic Party and liberal causes? And ask yourself, what's the worst thing that happened in Helsinki yesterday? That the president began a conversation with the second largest nuclear power in the world about, let's see, nuclear proliferation, radical Islamic terrorism, innocent people slaughtered daily in Syria, the ongoing civil war, Iranian aggression. Oh, and by the way, where is the DNC server? Where is that server that the FBI didn't look at? Where are those 33,000 deleted emails on yoga, a wedding, a funeral? Where are they? Now, the media, they wanted what? They wanted Obama-like promises to Vladimir that he'll show more flexibility from Trump to Putin. And of course, President Trump has long stated that good international relationships with our friends and our geopolitical foes is a very good thing for everybody. Simple truth. Now, this is especially true when nuclear weapons are in play. And unfortunately, prior to yesterday's summit, U.S.-Russia relations, they were incredibly strained. And while President Trump tried to ease these tensions and carve out some kind of working diplomatic channel with Vladimir Putin, well, your mainstream media, they were out for blood even before the president arrived. And if you thought the rhetoric and the vitriol coming from America's abusively biased press was bad, well, tonight, it has become so much worse. We have Holocaust comparisons, Pearl Harbor references, calls for revolution in this country, and much more. You don't believe me? We have the tape.
If the president did that today because he has some reason to serve that other country rather than our own, then a lot that has previously been inexplicable is now explicable. And that's the worst case scenario.
It's just as serious to me as the Cuban Missile Crisis in terms of an attack or the 9/11 attack. His performance today will live in infamy as much as the Pearl Harbor attack or Kristallnacht.
When do we see almost a shadow government come out and say, we cannot side with the government, whether it's the cabinet or the Senate? I think that's the big question.
You stood next to that man and you said it and gave the middle finger to America.
That's right.
We now have to figure out how to deal with a president of the United States who wittingly or unwittingly has been compromised. What we saw yesterday was collusion, witting or unwitting, in the president's words and attitudes toward Putin.
The president looked like a weak, dumpy stooge to a KGB spy. He had a chance to show loyalty to the men and women in uniform of America's military and intel community, and instead he betrayed them.
Somebody needs to make it clear to President Trump that his behavior in that press conference was un-American, outrageous, ridiculous, stupid.
You had a one-word reaction to what you saw yesterday. Treason.
Treason, yeah.
All right, 9/11, Pearl Harbor. You know, I'm normally kind of immune to the media's daily dose of feigned moral outrage, but this is sick and it's now pathological, really sick. Now, this is not news. These people are not journalists. These are not news channels. What you just saw is nothing but left-wing propaganda, misinformation. It's just that plain, obvious, and simple. And naturally, you have former communist turned CIA director turned MSNBC conspiracy theorist John Brennan also chiming in with more propaganda of his own. Take a look.
I think there's a big question, first of all, in terms of those who are on Mr. Trump's national security team, whether they can continue to serve in good conscience an individual who basically betrayed his nation. What Mr. Trump did yesterday was to betray the women and men of the FBI, the CIA, NSA, and others, and to betray the American public. And that's why I use the term that this is nothing short of treasonous, because it is a betrayal of the nation. He is giving aid and comfort to the enemy, and it needs to stop. And Mr. Trump needs to understand that there are going to be consequences for him, too.
Can't wait to get to all of Brennan's nefarious activities, because it's all going to come out. And meanwhile, Brennan's former deep state partner in crime, James Comey, tweeted out, quote, "This was the day an American president stood on foreign soil next to a murderous lying thug and refused to back his own country. Patriots need to stand up and reject the behavior of this president." Jim, we reject your behavior, your abuse of power that rightly got you fired. So there you have it. You have two indignant, anti-Trump former bureaucrats chastising the president, all while they knew about Russia's attempts to meddle in our elections. By the way, it happened on their watch. They did nothing to sound the alarm, all because they thought their chosen candidate, that's right, Jim helped Hillary, remember? They thought she was going to win. We'll have more on that in a moment. But first, let's break down one key issue, and that is Comey, Brennan, and the media. They're losing it. Absolutely lost their minds. The topic of Russian-sponsored election hacking. Well, today President Trump clarified his remarks from the summit, made it perfectly clear that he trusts our intel agencies, not the ones that worked before, and their reports on Russian election meddling. And by the way, I have the proof. I'll show you in a second. Take a look.
I have full faith and support for America's great intelligence agencies, always had. And I have felt very strongly that while Russia's actions had no impact at all on the outcome of the election, let me be totally clear in saying that, and I've said this many times, I accept our intelligence community's conclusion that Russia's meddling in the 2016 election took place. Could be other people also.
Now, in case the left forgot, what you just saw from President Trump is a position that he has clearly articulated over and over and over and over again. And if your media had any honesty in them, they would remind you, they would do their job, but as usual, will do their job for them. So here's the president having said it this many times and more. Take a look.
As far as hacking, I think it was Russia, but I think we also get hacked by other countries and other people. And I can say that, you know, when we lost 22 million names and everything else that was hacked recently, they didn't make a big deal out of that. That was something that was extraordinary. That was probably China. We have much hacking going on. Well, I think it was Russia, and I think it could have been other people in other countries. Could have been a lot of people interfered. I think it was Russia, but I think it was probably other people and or countries. It was Russia, and I think it was probably others also. Well, the Russians had no impact on our votes whatsoever, but certainly there was meddling, and probably there was meddling from other countries and maybe other individuals.
So your media didn't believe them, but he had said it over and over and over and over and over again. We all know that Russians have been meddling in our elections. We know that Russia is a hostile regime. We all know that Putin is a bad actor. And today, now that Trump is the president, all of a sudden the left seems to care. Now, let's just slow down for a moment and let's discuss this blatant hypocrisy, because in 2008, there was Russian hacking into the McCain campaign and the Obama campaign, but at the time, it garnered very little attention. And in 2012, as President Obama gearing up for his big re-election bid, remember he was overheard on a hot mic telling then Russian President Medvedev that he'd have more flexibility. Don't tell the American people we'll have more flexibility after the election. Sounds like collusion.
This is my last election. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah. I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir.
Now, of course, following that incident, there was no outrage from the left in this country, no hysteria. Virtually no one in the mainstream media accused Obama of being Vladimir Putin's puppet, in that case, puppet. Anyway, months later, during a presidential debate, Barack Obama ridiculed Mitt Romney's warning about the Russia threat. Romney was right. Take a look.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back, because the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
No, of course, he thought global warming was the big geopolitical threat. And again, the mainstream media, they barely yawn. Remember in 2014, House Intel Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, he sounded the alarm about Russia's malicious intentions to cause chaos around the world and the 2016 elections here in America. Throughout his presidency, Obama warned by our own intel services about Russia meddling. He did nothing. 2016, there's Obama, 8 years of weakness, telling Donald Trump to quit whining that a U.S. election, no serious person thought it could possibly be rigged in any way. Stop whining. Take a look.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections, in part because they're so decentralized and the numbers of votes involved. There's no evidence that that has happened in the past, or that there are instances in which that will happen this time. And so I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes.
Okay, it did happen in the past, and it did happen in spite of him saying it couldn't happen. And by the way, Obama knew there was Russian meddling, and he did nothing, and he told us it couldn't happen. And then he dropped the ball. And the media, they didn't hold him accountable. And following the election in 2016, President Obama even stated publicly that shaming Putin publicly would not be an effective tactic, which now the media thinks was necessary, or you're not a patriot. Take a look.
And I should point out, by the way, part of why the Russians have been effective on this is because they don't go around announcing what they're doing. It's not like Putin's going around the world publicly saying, look what we did, wasn't that clever. He denies it. So the idea that somehow public shaming is going to be effective, I think doesn't read the thought process in Russia very well.
Of course, she was the anointed one, and the media for 8 years kissed his Well, you know. And where was the media hysteria over that? Why now? Why President Trump? Now, of course, the Obama administration's policy was much worse than its rhetoric. Obama did nothing to counter Vladimir Putin's aggression and his actions in Crimea, Ukraine. Obama did nothing when Russia dropped, literally showed up in Assad and started helping that dictator butcher, hundreds of thousands of Syrian men, women, and children. That happened on Obama's watch. He did nothing as Russia worked with Iran to destabilize the entire Middle East. Instead, Obama signed off on that insane, horrific Iranian nuclear deal, sending cargo planes with $150 billion in cash and other currency to the mullahs in Iran. By the way, while they were chanting death to America, death to Israel, burning our flag, the Israeli flag, funding terrorism around the world, and all of this meddling, all this interference was on Obama, Clapper's, Brennan, and Comey's watch, not Donald Trump's. He's cleaning up their mess. And according to reports, in order to secure the Iranian deal, Obama even looked the other way as the terrorist group Hezbollah funded their terrorist activities through drug trafficking deals in the U.S. And despite all of this, no outrage from the media in this country. In fact, they were cheering for Obama every single step of the way. But now the media is desperate. They didn't think Trump would win the primary. They didn't think he'd win the general election. They thought collusion would get him and Robert Mueller would nail him, but that's not working. So now their conspiracy theories have gone on steroids and human growth hormone. Meanwhile, in this, we all know that there was Russia collusion in the 2016 presidential election. We know about Putin. We know about Russia. Now, by the way, it surrounds Hillary Clinton in the 2016 campaign, not Donald Trump. Hillary paid a foreign spy, funneled money through a law firm, a foreign spy to put together unverified, what turned out to be Russian lies, Russian propaganda about Donald Trump, disseminated that material, now known as the dossier, throughout the federal government, throughout Obama's Justice Department, into the FBI, the U.S. Senate, and even used by the Obama administration to garner FISA warrants on a Trump campaign associate so they can spy on that campaign in the middle of a presidential election. By the way, there's a real story of Russia collusion. That is what the media will not report, the biggest abuse of power corruption scandal in our history. And the press is also refusing to cover the ongoing deep state scandal surrounding, look at this, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. Now, the bias of high-ranking FBI employees, they're at the very center of the 2016 effort to literally clear their chosen candidate, Hillary Clinton, of all charges, all felonies she committed, all obstruction she's guilty of while investigating a Russia witch hunt to take down Donald Trump. During our interview last night, here's what President Trump had to say about the corrupt lovebirds Strzok and Page. Take a look.
You have to find out who did Peter Strzok report to, because it was Comey and it was McCabe, but it was also probably Obama. If you think that Obama didn't know what was going, when you watch, and I said it today with President Putin, when you watch Peter Strzok's performance, the lover of Lisa Page, when you watch that performance, the FBI, I'll tell you, I know so many people in the FBI. These are incredible people. What they're going through watching this guy, a total phony. I mean, how about we'll stop it or something to that effect?
All right, joining us now, author of the brand new book. It's just out, and it's called Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, the case against the anti-Trump conspiracy, Judge Jeanine Pirro. You know, this is the thing. When you take your time and you actually lay out real information and facts, for example, how many times did Donald Trump say, yeah, Russia was guilty of meddling in our elections? And when he said today, he misspoke, liar, he's a liar. But he said it so many times, they don't care about the truth. This is now hurting the country with this one-sided agenda that the media obviously has that is anti-Trump.
You know, Sean, I must tell you, that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. These are the people who lie, they leak, and they are focused on taking down Donald Trump as the president of the United States. But the American people instinctively understood that we needed this man at just this time. And everything that you laid out tonight in your monologue is accurate. All of it is in my book. It's almost as though I knew it was going to happen. But can you imagine, Sean, Sean, if Donald Trump offered a reset button to Putin, what they would do, or if he was caught in an off-mic moment with Medvedev or Russian prime minister. But instead, what Donald Trump has done is he's given $90 billion in sales of arms to the Ukraine, mass sanctions against the annexation of Crimea, and yet the left is focused totally on taking him down. They are the criminals. They are the ones who decided that justice would not be blind, that justice would go against Donald Trump. And the pond scum in the swamp, from Brennan to Clapper to Comey to Strzok, all came together to use our justice system to go after a politician duly elected by the people. Normally, it's the politicians who go after people in justice. No, this was just the opposite, where people who are standing up for the Department of Justice and FBI
So what does the
are looking
president
to
do?
take down the president.
You know, at this point, I just think the media is so hostile. And the problem for them now is they dug themselves such a big hole, and none of it's come true. The apocalypse has not happened. The economy's turning around. I think you can't look at any of this if you don't see it through the prism of 2018. They see their power slipping away. And you're right. I mean, the president did arm Ukraine. The president, did have NATO exercises right off the border. The president, literally did put in multiple sanctions against Vladimir Putin. The president's cleaning up Brennan, Clapper, Obama and Comey and Clinton's mess here.
And
this was under their watch, not his.
And we've also killed hundreds of Russians in Syria. This president is doing exactly what he promised he would do. And I talk about it in the book. All of the good things he's doing today is being ignored by the media. And
They don't care. They're liars. They don't care. They're all agenda-driven.
They're leakers and they're liberals, Sean. And that's why people have to focus on 2018. They have to make sure that we will, in 2018, prove to the American people that they believe in justice. They believe that this man who takes incoming every day, the President of the United States, still gets up and fights for us every day. You know what? Let them have their dance, their crazy dance and get dressed up in their Antifa get-ups. They can do whatever they want. America gets it. They're talking to each other.
All right. Congrats on the book.
Thank you.